We want to thank the sponsors and partners that made this event possible. It's a long list. The City of Iowa City, the University of Iowa, the wonderful Iowa City Public Library, the Coralville Public Library, the wonderful Prairie Lights Bookstore, the Iowa Public Radio, Think Iowa City, Greater Iowa City Incorporated, and the West Bank Corporation Foundation. Support is provided by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Iowa Arts Council, which exists within the Iowa Economic Development Authority. Between events, be sure to visit the book fair at Merge, 136 South Dubuque, just right around the corner. Iowa City Book Festival events are open to everyone and are free, but they rely on your support. Please consider donating to the City of Literature by visiting Iowa City Book Festival, one word, .org, and clicking support. Today, we welcome Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Art Cullen. Art is the editor of the Storm Lake Times Pilot, a small weekly newspaper in northwest Iowa, a beautiful thing of print and ink. It only has a circulation of 3,000 subscribers, but despite its size, Art's thoughtful and tenacious editorials on government accountability, water quality, and agribusiness earned him the Pulitzer Prize for editorial writing in 2017. For decades, Art has combined a reporter's curiosity with a hometown perspective, documenting the issues shaping his community and beyond. His new book is Dear Marty, We Crapped in Our Nest, Notes from the Edge of the World. In it, Art reflects on the Storm Lake of his youth and explores the history of agriculture in Iowa, environmental and social challenges, and the people striving to make a difference. With insight, humor, and a journalist's eye for detail, Art shows how a small-town paper can stand up to powerful forces while chronicling a rapidly changing world. It's a pleasure to have him with us today. Let's give a warm welcome to Art Cullen.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, everybody. Can you hear all right? Well, great. What a great crowd, you know. You got to explain, I'm from Storm Lake. Didn't think anybody'd heard of me except for Steve Kettering, who's sitting out here, former state senator from Lakeview, Iowa. And it harkens back to the days when if you put ideology aside, a Republican and a Democrat could get Storm Lake dredged, you know. And we can't seem to get a goddamn thing done right now. So, God, I wish Steve Kettering was back in the legislature. And again, thanks for showing up. Little history behind this book. I had written a book previously called Storm Lake, and it didn't sell as well as Michelle Obama's book. And did okay in Iowa City, though. Thank you. Go Hawks! And so during the pandemic, my old high school buddy and me, Marty Case, from Storm Lake, St. Mary's, and I think his brother Todd Case is in the audience from West Winds Realty here in Iowa City, and if you need a house, he's the guy to see. And Marty and I got together, and we thought we were going to make a pot full of money writing a book, because we had nothing else to do but talk on the phone. He lives in the Twin Cities, and I live in Storm Lake. And so we hired an agent and wrote a sample chapter called The Corn Gospel, about how our dominion from Genesis, manifest destiny and all that is our undoing. We plundered the native people here, stole their land, and then now we grow 200 bushel corn on a petrochemical base. And the Raccoon River is the most endangered river in America because of ag pollution. So that was kind of what the Corn Gospel chapter was about. We thought it was pretty compelling when we read it to ourselves. And the New York editors, we took it in front of them, and they all passed on it. They said, rural doesn't sell. And they're all wondering how Trump won Iowa, and how does he have the rural vote transfixed. But they'd rather have somebody from Baltimore explain it to you. And so we were pretty dejected by that, and went back to lick our wounds. And the ever-persistent Steve Semkin from Ice Cube Press in North Liberty, he's a one-man band, Iowa's only independent publisher that I'm aware of, kept bugging me to write a book. And I really didn't, I was still kind of smarting over it, and I really didn't have the inclination. And I thought, what the hell, I can just write a column and reach more people. And he just kept pestering me. And finally, I relented, because Iowa is at a low point, I think, in my lifetime anyway. And so I figured the book might be useful, at least in engendering a conversation about rural Iowa and what we've lost, and what our promise is, too, also. So I went ahead and wrote this book. It reads very easily in the bathroom, I think. It's short takes, I took a bunch of old Ann Landers material and recycled it and put it into this book. Dear Marty, we crapped in our nest. That's Marty Case, my old best bud. Notes from the edge of the world. And people across the country and in Iowa kind of regard Western Iowa as the edge of the world. And so I'll just do a few short readings here. I get nervous after I do a lot of cocaine in front of a large crowd. And my nose runs. So we'll just begin at the beginning. Chapter 1, The View from Storm Lake. It's not the end of the world, but you could see it from here. Corn and soybeans, row upon row, with windmills and hoghouses lining the vast horizon. Here at the eastern edge of nowhere, we talk first, as always, of weather. Storm Lake has been dry. What should be Little Storm Lake has turned into a cracked mudflat. Look west from Buffalo Ridge, the edge of what the Wisconsin Glacier bore, and you can see the wildfires in the sky and smell them. The Great Plains are on fire, the West too. It's a millennial drought, the scientists report, the worst since the Mandan people had to flee northwest Iowa up the Missouri to the Dakotas some 1,200 years ago. The Ogallala Aquifer, slaking the nation's beef herd from Texas to Nebraska, is running dry. Storm Lake's outlet dam hasn't run all spring and summer. Minnehaha Falls in the Twin Cities no longer fall since the creek trickled away. Tractors and trucks kick up a storm of dust. At the end of October 2022, it was 77 degrees, and you could scarcely recall the last time it rained. Sound familiar? Still, the corn came in at more than 200 bushels per acre, thanks to genetic engineering and a thin layer of topsoil laced with petrochemicals that were flushing down the river. Down in Kansas, the corn can barely grow, even with pumping from the Ogallala Aquifer. At night, you can hear it grow. You cannot hear its gasps as the wee hours turn more humid and hot. The Missouri River runs wild against our engineering and washes whole towns down with it when the gales come in June. This can't go on. The Gulf of Mexico is suffering from those 200 bushels of corn. The Mississippi River is so full of Iowa and Illinois loam that barges can't float down to the deep south. The dirt kills the coastline too, while the hurricanes intensify. You can see that this cannot be sustained. Our dominion has been our undoing. It's not just the weather that got extreme. The people changed. Iowa nice went nasty. A lot of us woke up to a Tea Party revolt in 2010 and wondered what happened to the place of seeming moderation from our youth. Unlike old Rip Van Winkle, Our eyes were open the entire time, but we didn't necessarily notice. You could hear it coming. For 20 years, Steve King, our congressman from Northwest Iowa, railed against immigration. He warned of a great replacement whereby brown or black people would displace whites who displaced the native people by slaughter and starvation. We told you so, but nobody listened. That he did not expect to meet homosexuals in heaven, that European culture was better than African culture, that immigrants would drive us out of rural Iowa as if the agribusiness cabal hadn't already finished that job. King gave voice to the frustrations of those left behind. The family farm was wheezing, if not dead. The Maytag repairman moved from Newton, Iowa, to the Maquiladora plant in Juarez. Even the wind turbine factory that replaced Maytag in Newton shut down. Mississippi river towns that were once manufacturing and processing hubs went dark, and their denizens felt their destiny was swept down the river. You can't make it here anymore. Mexicans took your job. Black kids get a leg up in college. I'm standing here shoveling corn, making just enough to square the rent. Who's helping me? Somebody in Shanghai or San Francisco? Frustration and resentment are the spawn of consolidation and loss of what was, what is, and what shall be. We told you so. Few listened until Trip Gabriel of the New York Times called out some of King's racist blurts in 2020. Republicans in Congress drummed him out despite having just campaigned with him when he repeated all the same tropes. Just like that, King was gone because he was finally noticed. He was replaced by Randy Feenstra, a Dutchman from Hull, Iowa, who scorns every step of the immigrant as much, but feeds the fear in a more palatable and less direct way. This is where the seeds were scattered. The insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, should have surprised no one. Insurgents had already stormed the Minnesota and Michigan capitals. Police in Minneapolis were shooting at CNN news crews following George Floyd's death in the wake of white militia freaks trying to burn down the Twin Cities. This did not happen in New York or Los Angeles. It happened in Charlottesville, where the torch burns brightest. Who paid attention? Who'd been listening to the spleen venting? The dots were there, waiting to be connected. An editor said, "Isn't that a stereotype?" After I had written, "While the church ladies quilt and the men shoot outside, other business gets done over coffee. They do not declare victory and rest. I know men who will crawl on their bellies through the frozen farm fields stalking a Canada goose about to get blasted, and plenty of others less ambitious who would just lie there waiting for them to fly over from the nearby sewage lagoons. They are real. Nearly all I know are perfectly okay with assault rifles for recreation. Then there are the church ladies. They quilt in Verina, population 68, to honor families of police and military, and they regularly welcome the embrace of Representative King, the Republican down the road in Chiron, population 321. It's not what the quilts are necessarily about, but the women generally are pro-life. They got started at St. Columbkille's Parish Hall. The church has since closed, but they keep on. Or it could be in St. Joe, where the crosses were planted on the church lawn to remember the babies lost to abortion. The Kossuth County hamlet voted solid Democrat until 1990, when Republican Tom Talkey bettered Senator Tom Harkin there almost entirely over the abortion issue. They are all real people with real opinions that they share with the likes of Steve King. They vote. It's how politics gets done in these villages that might as well be on the digital opinion factory editor's moon. It's how the U.S. Supreme Court and the Iowa Supreme Court got stacked with justices who, within a week of each other, flipped precedent into the ditch and declared there is no right to abortion under the state or federal constitutions. Coincidence? Not. It's the culmination of a 50-year campaign to organize rural people through the church. Morton Blackwell, who helped Jerry Falwell launch the moral majority, described it as harvesting the last virgin timber. evangelicals. Politics starts in the pews and at the gun club and spreads from there. If you cannot imagine a town of 68 people, you might not be able to appreciate how things get done around here. Roe versus Wade galvanized evangelicals and Catholics, previously suspicious of each other, into a powerful political partnership that flourishes today. Iowa Right to Life has become one of the most influential outfits in Des Moines alongside the Iowa Farm Bureau and the Association of Business and Industry. Somehow, there is this disconnect of people who do not share the same experiences. Reality takes on caricature. When you look at a quilting lady as if she were a black and white photo, you cannot see that she has deeply rooted convictions about life that are reinforced at the pulpit in the morning, at coffee in the afternoon, and on AM radio all day long. The result? In 2010, 3 Supreme Court justices were ousted when outside money funneled by Bob Vanderplots and the family leaders staged a campaign to defeat them for ruling that the state cannot discriminate against homosexuals as a class. Their replacements were the ones who overturned the abortion precedent. That was the same year the U.S. Supreme Court handed down Citizens United, Corporations are People and Money is Speech, which opened the floodgates to unbridled purchase of our political and judicial systems. And Heller, the right to bear arms extends to individuals. And now in Iowa, you can carry a concealed weapon into the courthouse without a permit. It was also the year of the Tea Party revolution funded by those groups cultivated by Blackwell and friends, setting up Mitch McConnell and his errand boy, Chuck Grassley, to stack the courts. The cloud seeding from Virginia worked. The ground was fertile in Iowa with its large number of Catholics, Missouri Synod Lutherans, and evangelicals in tiny white wooden churches along blacktop roads where the political gospel was handed down. The dogma of freedom for guns was filtered through groups like the Iowa Firearms Coalition. Farmers who wanted the government off their backs bought into the theology of no regulation while still expecting crop insurance subsidies peddled by the Farm Bureau. The network worked assiduously over the past 5 decades, building a media echo chamber, winning state house races over guns and abortion, and securing state and federal judicial systems. Now, no Democrat Iowa senator lives west of Des Moines. That just changed when Caitlin Dray was elected in Sioux City. The gun lobby took out Democratic Senate Majority Leader Mike Gronstel of Council Bluffs in 2016. The Democrats have been wandering wounded since. The Iowa Supreme Court has repeatedly bleated since 2016 that it wants nothing to do with regulating Iowa's biggest enterprise and polluter, agribusiness. Ironic that a couple weeks after the abortion rulings, the U.S. and Iowa high courts each restricted the ability of local governments to regulate pollution. Former justices and appellate attorneys have lamented to me how politicized the Iowa court has become. They're still reeling. Democrats wrote off rural believers as Bible thumpers clinging to their guns. The electoral consequences have been felt as liberty was left to the legislative meat grinder. You could see it coming like a thunderstorm rolling in from Nebraska. You could hear it if you listened here in the land of tall corn and quaint misimpression. I'll just blow my nose one more time. No kidding, when I get in front of a crowd like this, it turns into a faucet. Nobody's walked out yet, so I'll do another one. I haven't seen anybody walk out. So it goes. Climate change is a hoax. Gas prices are real. Immigrants get food stamps while I pay double for beef. Who needs Liz Cheney or some D.C. elite telling me about my responsibilities? She should pay my property taxes. When has she worked for a living? How many of our boys died in Iraq and Afghanistan for nothing at the hands of Dick Cheney? And what do we get for your Gulf wars? Higher gas prices. And what does Joe Biden get us? John Deere tractors made in Mexico and a shooting war with Russia. which leads to higher natural gas prices and fertilizer prices since it's gin from natural gas. That's the vacuum of our politics in which the hearings on the insurrection and the whole stop the steal, sell the big lie swirled. Fox News didn't even bother to air them. It was all so remote and past. It was terrible, yes, you hear in the echoes. Those wackos should be in jail. Some already are. Good riddance. Trump wasn't there. He was watching on TV. He told them to stop, but they wouldn't. What was he supposed to do? So yeah, he could be elected president in Iowa. It was the same with the impeachment trials. Those who already knew the story and made up their minds long ago may have watched. It made little difference to the prosecutors aiming for Trump or the jury of voters who felt his voice shared their animus toward government. Don't tell me what to do or think. Earn your own. Quit picking my pocket. This is all just the continuing witch hunt. What do you know about how I handle guns? Takes a lot of gall for you to lecture me on children when you're showing them dirty pictures in school. It was on the radio. You want me to think the sky is falling? It's my fault. I was not around in 1619, so take it someplace else. You can hear it in the quiet of a tiny village that Thursday afternoon with just a post office and a bar and a sign of defiance in the window and a gun store with a customer walking in. Have your hearings. A bulldozer is about to knock down what used to be Main Street. Thanks. We'll go on. I hope maybe I'll drop on something a little lighter. It's difficult. I couldn't find it. So we'll read this one instead. It was a fine fall day as we breathed in the smell of manure for 2 hours from Ames to Storm Lake. The week before, our noses told us in the dark when we hit the Iowa state line. As we looked at the bounty rolling in, we thought for the millionth time that this should be the richest place on earth. Somebody else gets the money, we get the poo. Iowa ranked 30th in median household income at about $80,000 per year in 2024. That high-tax socialist Minnesota's median income is $96,000. Illinois is at $95,000. Storm Lake is at $51,000. We have the best soil, though less of it every year. We have the best climate for growing corn, especially, but it's becoming more extreme. We have abundant water, but we're drawing it down and fouling it. We have an elaborate infrastructure that should support people in prosperity that we are leaving to decay. We used to have a lot of brains combined with a work ethic, not afraid to get out there and hoe a row. We're chasing the brains off to Minnesota and Illinois, where the money is. We're hostile to immigrants who are perfectly willing to pick up the shovel. It's not a good position for our future. Iowa is the only state with a rising cancer rate. It is second in cancer incidence to Kentucky, Tobacco Central. Iowa leads the nation in childhood respiratory illness. We're second to Wisconsin in drinking, unfortunately. There's enough science out there to tell us that nitrate in the water leads to higher rates of childhood cancer and neurological problems for adults. Research shows higher asthma rates in children around meatpacking complexes. Bayer was just hit with another verdict finding that Roundup causes cancer. Its largest investor is calling for talks with the plaintiffs. Consolidation is killing us. Now we make half as much in Storm Lake as someone in Illinois, which we like to scoff at as being corrupt. Who owns Iowa? Koch Enterprises and Bayer. How do you fix pollution in the river? You don't. You tell yourself it's the price of feeding starving children in Gaza with number 2 yellow corn. Or it's the price of us not being involved in Middle Eastern wars. You put up with the stench near Iowa Falls because Iowa Select is the only game around, so you play that game. We could have open markets, but we elect politicians who let them lock up. You should be damn glad for your $50,000 in median household income in Storm Lake. Your kid doesn't really need to go to college. So few jobs around here call for it. Yeah, we used to make twice as much. relatively speaking, but sure are glad we don't have to pay those union dues. The best you can hope for is a tax cut, even though you barely have to pay tax anyway. Tuition at Iowa State goes up and up, while state appropriations go down and down. The mechanic likes the realignment business I bring him from me driving state highways. Not much road work to bother you from here to Fort Dodge. All roads lead to Des Moines, which can barely be reached these days for all the construction. Why would you stay in Pomeroy? The main street is about to implode. In fact, it was just bulldozed this last summer. The main street is about to implode. Literally, it is roped off by yellow tape. One of the buildings used to be a bank, once rock solid, and these days it's about ready to explode into the street, which isn't in such great shape itself. And they're going to tear down the school. The chemicals were progress. So were the confinements and the sow sell-offs. The crop propaganda told us it was the only way to go, so we went. You can't be sure why Iowa's tops in cancer. You just can't blame it on the dust like we like to chuckle. But the dust is laden with ammonia and sulfide. It's what you smell near I-35. If you suspect a correlation, you are anti-livestock. Were it not for ethanol and Iowa Select, we might be making less than $50,000 per household, or would we? What's causing Main Street to fall down and cancer rates among Iowa children to rise? Why is Iowa so much poorer than Minnesota, and Storm Lake is so much poorer than Iowa? We bought the pig and the poke. Trade your independence for a yoke disguised as corporate security. Now nature is calling our bluff, and the science is adding up. This has not been the best experiment in agri-industrial consolidation. If we can figure out how to get back to center, we could be better off than our neighbors. We should be, we were. If you have the patience, you want to hear one more short one? All right. I'm just working up a good froth. This might be a little more optimistic. This is about a guy who's doing something really interesting. He's foregoing chemicals, and he plants 10 yards of corn and then 10 yards of forage ground, and he has this autonomous cart that's powered by solar, and it's got full of pigs and goats and stuff. And Patty Witham's in the back row from Storm Lake. Hi, Patty. So I'll quit talking and start reading, otherwise Patty will leave. Zach Smith. Zach Smith snapped an ear of corn in half from an end row on his northern Iowa farm. It was a scorcher. A sun obscured by distant wildfires north and west started to cast a pink glow in the September afternoon. Smith counted the kernels and judged their size, quickly ciphering that this row likely will yield more than 340 bushels per acre. Mind-boggling. That's 50% higher than the best neighborhood pre-harvest estimates tested by a tenacious drought creeping east from the Great Plains. His Winnebago County farm had half as much rain as normal, whatever that is anymore, this season, just 8.5 inches from January through August. That ear, kerneled in maize to the top, was a thing to behold amid this parched backdrop, especially considering it sprouted from Smith's real-time experiment in using plant diversity and livestock to make farms more resilient in the here and now to months of drought snapped by 6-inch torrents of rain 3 weeks ago. We're using things that are free. That's why this is so disruptive, Smith said. It's an 8-acre test plot Smith showed off to neighbors from as far away as Fergus Falls, Minnesota, interested in his novel approach to conservation agriculture in an era of extreme weather, planting corn in 4 widely spaced rows for maximum sun exposure next to a pasture strip of equal width sown with 8 varieties of forages, from sweet peas to kale to Sudan sorghum grass. An autonomous barn full of goats and chickens crept along the pasture strip, powered by solar panels throwing off excess energy that could be used to power farm buggies or the homestead. The goats mow down everything, stimulating the soil with their hooves, while the chickens cluck behind, picking out corn left from last season. A larger pen hosts cattle. The beasts fertilize the field for free. They create pathways to the underground, along with earthworms, to sponge water and hold it. The following year, the row crops and pastures switch places, keeping the subsurface biosphere in tune. On the rest of his 500 acres, Smith anticipates moderate yield losses, maybe 10 to 15% of potential this year. He's not wrenching his gut. I know what I'm doing is working, he said. Over the past 15 years, Smith has converted the farm that's been in his family for a century to using minimum soil tillage and planting winter cover crops like cereal rye after the corn harvest so the soil is not laid bare to winter wind and spring runoff. He has reduced his fertilizer use by 80% and dramatically cut his use of herbicides as cover crops stunt nascent weeds while holding plant nutrients in place. Then he came up with this notion to put livestock in movable feasting barns, which completes the cycle of using the sun's energy to produce protein. His father, Raymond, wondered at the time, but rolled with it. The boys down at the Buffalo Center coffee shop may cackle about the meat goats bleeding in a solar barn and giving up prime Iowa black gold to kale, when you could grow corn. I'm happy to provide them entertainment, Smith quipped of his skeptics. To top it off, he quit his job as a Pioneer brand seed corn dealer and chemical dealer. That turned some heads. It's a highly lucrative business that accounted for 80% of his income. In Iowa, that's radical. But I wanted to wake up in the morning feeling good about what I do. One driving factor for me is that the family farm has been going away for a long, long time. To survive, you have to think 100% different. This year sort of bears him out. Smith will do okay in the worst Iowa drought since 1988 and the hottest summer in history. In fact, he thinks he can thrive. He says that his stock cropper system with the cluster cluck mobile mini barns I mean, I cluster cluck, that's just good. Mobile mini barns will allow him to make 7 times more per acre than just growing corn after soybeans. It's because he's making more efficient use of photosynthesis than farmers who pack in corn and crowd out light from the full plant. After that recent 6-inch downpour, his fields weren't puddled and washing away soil when others were. A pitchfork revealed Smith's soil, dense black from carbon and teeming with worms, moist and crumbly, just like the agronomist ordered. I'm proud of him, said Patriarch Ray, 70. He, too, could barely believe how good the corn looked. Thank you.
Now that Art is suitably frothed up, he's ready to take some questions.
Just raise your hand if you have a question.
We have a microphone.
Art, I want to tell you I've been wanting to meet you for a long time. Thank you. They're
made in America.
Carhartt.
Carhartt will do.
My papa wore these building fence when the farm crisis came along and he couldn't really have pigs anymore and he didn't want a confinement farm. So he built fence for many years and tore both his rotator cuffs and worked so hard. And he started a purebred Black Angus cattle herd. And he passed from cancer in 2021. I appreciate everything you do, every word you write. I got my MFA from I received my MFA from Iowa State. I know Mary Swander.
Right? Anybody got a score?
I teach here now at the University of Iowa. Go Hawks. I'm seeking your advice. I want to run.
Don't go to work at a newspaper.
Well, one of my degrees is in journalism, so I want to run for House District 92. Heather Hora is there right now. It's Washington County. I haven't really looked in it too much, but I have a meeting on Monday with the Democratic Party, and I was wondering, what advice do you have for me for those people beyond radical love, beyond listening, beyond a lot of Busch Light beers and talking together? How do I get my best friend's father to vote for me who never wants to vote for a Democrat?
That requires a drink.
You got some Busch Light in there?
Just straight gin. First thing I'd do, I said, where are the bibs? And talk to him about your life experience and how we have the highest cancer rate in America, and I'm being treated for prostate cancer myself. And you know, it's a love in. It's a love in. Peace, baby. Oh, we're good. We're good. What it has introduced me to is the degraded system of rural health care, that I have to drive 4 hours to Iowa City from Storm Lake to get basic health care, you know. And so anyway, that's the first thing. I think the two biggest issues in Iowa are water right now, water quality. I think that's a big, hot issue. 1,000 people showed up at the Sheslow Auditorium at Drake University this summer in Des Moines to talk about nitrate and fertilizer rates. How often do you see 1,000 people show up in Des Moines to talk about anhydrous ammonia? And they did. And I think the conversation's changing because people, for one thing, people are linking it to cancer. And another thing is they instituted a lawn watering ban in Des Moines, and they'd rather have cancer than a brown lawn. And that's where I'd really start, is a sincere conversation about Iowa's high environmental illness rates, and especially cancer. Northwest Iowa, where I live, the 4th Congressional District, has the highest rates of prostate cancer in men and the highest rates of breast cancer in women in the country. It also has the densest concentration of livestock in North America. Now, you can make the connections if you care to. And we live in a cloud of hog shit. And when I walk out my house in the morning, it sometimes can gag you if they've been spreading it that day. And that's where I'd start the conversation. And I'd say, you know, do you really think that we need to have, you know, 5,000 sows in a barn in Sac County pumping manure miles down the road in a hose and then spraying it on a field? Is that how you do agriculture in Iowa? No, that's not how we do agriculture. That's what I'd be talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Has anybody told you you look like Mark Twain?
Never.
And you write in the spirit of Mark Twain, because he told the country off, and he, you know, credited. He gave credit where it's due, but he gave criticism where it was due. I heard you on NPR, on our local station, and you talked about the aliens, not aliens, the immigrants, the undocumented immigrants.
Yeah.
And how they can help save Iowa. Because this is a little state, but we need workers. You even have to pick watermelon by hand. And things you have to do, and you have to have these people, because immigrants is how you keep this. That's how the East Coast stayed alive when everybody was moving west. And I really enjoy your paper because your paper is the only paper that published my letters when I sent them in.
Oh, keep those cards and letters coming. You know, that's the damn thing. When they shut down the Storm Lake and Waterloo pork plants for just a few days during the pandemic, meat prices went up 50%. And so the governors of Nebraska, Iowa, and South Dakota got together and asked President Trump to invoke the Defense Authorization Act to force those people onto the kill floor where there's no vaccine, no protection whatsoever. But what the hell, they're just Mexicans, you know. And I can't remember how many people died in the Storm Lake Tyson plant. And in Waterloo, they were betting on how many people would die in Waterloo. And that was the most crass, cynical thing I'd ever seen in Iowa. And I couldn't believe I was living here. You know, that's just not who we used to be. These people are providing our food, and that damn Ron DeSantis, he was up there in Hull with Randy Feenstra grilling pork chops, and they were trash-talking immigrants the entire time up there. And who the hell do they think is manning those dairy barns up around Hull, and who's cutting the pork chops that Ron DeSantis was grilling, you know? And it's a shame on our conscience when we treat people that way, I think. We want them in here and force them into work, and then we say, but by God, we're going to deport your sweet ass. So they're just scared to death. They don't come out in Storm Lake now. The restaurants are empty. They stay home with their heads down, and then they work their asses off because it's their only ticket to freedom. And that's what we used to be about in this country. Excuse me. Jesus, gets me going.
Art, thank you for being here. I'm Barry Byrne. I'm from Verina.
Oh! Nice to see you. You Bill Byrne's brother?
I am.
Yeah, okay.
We don't see eye to eye very often.
I can imagine if you're here. Bill's a good guy, though, a big supporter of Buena Vista University. We appreciate him.
Yeah, he went to school there.
Bill made a buck or two.
Yeah. I wish him the best.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
And you know how shit gets done around Verina, too. There.
Hey, Art, you looked good on Jim Acosta yesterday.
Well, thanks. You look good listening.
Yeah. So you might want to tell people about that little deal. But my real question is, or request, is I would like you to talk a little bit about the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation, because newspapers are dying, and you are committed to keeping newspapers alive. The research is very clear. If you live in a town without a newspaper, you have very, very limited knowledge. So thank you again for being here.
Well, thanks for that softball. I appreciate it. There was actually studies by the University of North Carolina and the University of Notre Dame showing that we're in news deserts, as we call them, with basically without a news source, that there's higher tax rates, higher crime rates, more wasteful spending, less civic involvement. It only makes sense. And, more drunk drivers because they aren't shamed by the local newspaper. And, well, anyway, during the pandemic, a half a dozen county seat newspapers folded. And the Centerville Iowegian, one of the oldest businesses in the state, went under. And that's just unimaginable to me. Well, anyway, we were going broke at the Storm Lake Times Pilot, and our friends at the Carroll Times Herald, Doug Burns, owned it at the time. They were going broke too, so we started this nonprofit 501c3 called the Western Iowa Journalism Foundation.com. And hint, hint. And we support papers in Storm Lake, Cherokee, Carroll, Coon Rapids, Harlan, in all, west of Interstate 35. Yeah, it's very difficult for us to keep going. And we benefited from having a documentary done about us called Storm Lake. It's on PBS for free this month, on PBS online. You can stream it for free. And it's a beautiful documentary about our newspaper called Storm Lake. And we needed to come up with $66,000 by the end of the year because we had a $44,000 increase in our health insurance costs. And we didn't know where we were going to come up with the money, and my brother and I were about ready to fold the newspaper, about ready to close her down while we still had our assets intact. And this rich guy from California heard about it on the radio, and he emailed me and said he didn't know how much money we needed. He emailed and said there'll be $65,000 in your checking account tomorrow. We needed 66. But sure as hell, the money showed up. And then the film was screening. It went from Detroit, Chicago, Denver, San Francisco, and then Los Angeles. And this guy's sitting in the front row at the screening in Los Angeles. And he says, I want to help. And in typical Iowa fashion, I said, oh, you've done quite enough, thanks. He said, no, you fool, I want to help you, and I got a lot of money. And so he said, if you can come up with a sustainable business plan, I'll fund you. And he did. He helped our competitor in Storm Lake. The Storm Lake Pilot Tribune was also going broke during the pandemic. They had 400 subscribers left. We had about 3,000. And he helped us merge those newspapers, and he gave us the money. And his only instructions were to make sure that everybody had health insurance and that you stand up for democracy. Yeah. So not all billionaires are bad. That's what I learned. And the memory chips that he makes are probably in your cell phone. His name was John Tu. Chinese immigrant, fled communist China with Chiang Kai-shek, and then realized that Taiwan was just as corrupt as mainland China, and he had to get to the U.S., but he couldn't speak English, so he went to Germany to learn English. And he was an indentured servant in a German shipyard. Can you imagine the racism he encountered? And then somehow he finally got to the U.S., and with a buddy he met playing basketball from Taiwan, they invented a better mousetrap in their garage of all, the California story. And then now he's worth $13 billion. And just a hell of a guy. He knows what freedom is, It's a great story.
I came here 34 years ago from California, and I came here because of Iowa's wonderful commitment to public education. At the time, we were fourth in the nation. We're nowhere near that now. In addition to black soil, we have a great public education system in Iowa, and if we don't defend it, it's going to go away. What advice do you have?
Well, I think that's going to get cured in the midterm elections, honestly. I've been going around. I live in a very densely Republican area, and even they're fed up with Kim Reynolds. And I think people are real uncomfortable with the idea of banning books. That's just not in our tradition. And saying that you can't talk about how we stole the land from the native people, that's a divisive concept. You know, I think most Iowans are really centrist. It's just that the Democratic Party gave up on Iowa. And so we only have a one-party state now. We don't have a functioning two-party system. And that's as much a fault of the Democrats as anybody. And failing to show up in rural Iowa is a crime against the body politic. I always get a kick out of it when candidates say, yeah, I'm on my way from Sioux City to Fort Dodge. I'd like to stop by and see you. Storm Lake is just a waypoint. You know, it's not any place you'd ever want to really go and actually talk to some Mexican voters, you know, or Lakeview, for God's sake, you know. And so we've abandoned the state to a one-party system. But I think, you know, we've veered off into the right ditch. And I think Iowans are pretty pragmatic people, and they don't want a lot of regulation. They do like incentives, and they don't like religion in schools. I really don't think that, other than up in Sioux County. I don't think Iowans aren't really into that, and the polls would reflect it. And so I think people are pretty uncomfortable with it, and I think we like divided government, and I think Rob Sand has a hell of a chance of winning that governor's race. And he will have a Republican legislature to deal with, and then we'll get back to making sense. I tell you what, when Steve Kettering was working with Darrell Beal from Fort Dodge, a Democrat from Fort Dodge, they got a hell of a lot of stuff done for rural Iowa, you know, because it was divided government. The Vision Iowa program that built the Dubuque Mississippi River Museum, just a fantastic facility if you've never been there. That was a Vision Iowa program, and that was created by Jeff Lamberti from Ankeny, a Republican, the son of Don Lamberti, and Mike Gronstall and Tom Vilsack, and supported by Steve Kettering. And that's how we used to do things in this state. And I think and everywhere I go, I talk to, people are yearning for moderation. And I just saw, you know, a WGN news producer was tackled and put on the pavement, kind of a pudgy white woman, by ICE agents en masse in Chicago. And, you know, where are we going? You know, that's not what this state is about, I don't think.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Hi, Art. My name is Margaret Cressmeyer. I'm from Iowa City, and I've actually been to Storm Lake and seen the lovely display of your Pulitzer Prize sitting on the bookshelf. Very unauspicious. Anyway, my concern is we have a lot of good Democratic candidates running, and I'm not hearing any of them talk about water. I've heard Rob Sand mention it, but he doesn't seem to have a plan. And I know what they're afraid of, but do you have any idea of suggestions on how we can get them to start talking about water?
Keep bugging them. And, you know, everybody talks about water quality, and it's got very, very strong political support. You know, was it 2010 when we voted in that constitutional amendment, Steve? That was over 60%, where we dedicated a stream of a fractional sales tax to natural resources. And of course, the legislature never appropriated the money, never enacted the 1/8 of a cent sales tax. And so there's very strong political support for it, but the deck is stacked against them because, every acre lost to corn is an acre lost to the agrochemical complex. And so I think that you can't. Ann Selzer of the Des Moines, the Iowa poll fame, did a lot of surveying on Trump to Obama voters, and one of the #1 places they agree is water quality. As long as you talk about extreme weather, you stay away from the words climate change, and you talk about water quality, people can get behind that. And it's a winning thing. And again, Steve Kettering was a great champion of water quality in Iowa, and as a very conservative Republican banker from Lakeview. But he had a lot of support for that reason, including from Storm Lake. So it does work. Democrats are so afraid of the Farm Bureau. Well, they're not going to get their votes anyway, so what the hell, you know? Just go for it. Rob Sand needs to firm up his spine. He's developing a program on water quality. Well, you'd think he'd have one by now. He's from Decorah, for Christ's sake. So let's get with the program. And, and stay away from the cultural wedge issues that defeat Democrats and keep us hating on each other. Let's talk about, why is Highway 7 in such bad condition? And let's talk about that. Why can't we get a little help fixing the Lynn Grove Dam? That's where we can talk turkey. And let's get away from this other crap about, what bathroom you're using. Yes.
I think that's it, Art.
Okay, well, hey, thanks for coming, everybody.